Please, can you take me to the hospital? Please, can you take me to the hospital? The woman whispered, doubled over in pain and clutching her belly as the contractions tore through her. People walked past her like she was invisible, just another poor, exhausted woman in the street. Her clothes were worn, her eyes were tired, and she looked like someone the world had already given up on. Then she begged the man standing nearby, a stranger in plain clothes, quiet, distant, unreadable. She didn't know who he was, she didn't know what he carried, and she didn't know the weight of the world he controlled. To her, he was simply hope, but fate has a way of hiding miracles in the most unexpected faces. Because the man she pleaded with, the man who calmly helped her into his car, and the man who stayed by her side through every terrifying moment, was not just a stranger. He was a CEO. Billionaire, one whose next decision would change her entire life. Sometimes the person you least expect is the one sent to rewrite your story, and sometimes a single moment of desperation becomes the beginning of destiny. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please, subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten, and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. Lena Carter felt the contraction hit like someone tightening a belt around her entire stomach. She froze under sidewalk, her breath catching as she bent forward and grabbed a parking meter for balance. Cars rolled past without slowing. People walked around her like she was a trash bag someone had left on the street. She tried to straighten, but the pain made her knees buckle, lowered herself to the curb because falling would hurt worse. Please, someone. She reached out a hand, but the woman nearest her veered away, pretending to look at her phone. A man stepped over her bag and didn't even glance down. Another contraction tore through her, sharper and faster than the last. The world blurred. Her throat felt tight, but she forced herself to speak loud enough to be heard. Can you help me, please? I need a hospital. Her voice scraped out as barely more than a whisper, but it was all she had left. She pulled her coat over her belly, hugging it as if she could hold herself together that way. She tasted metal in her mouth from biting down on pain. She had meant to take the bus. She had meant to get to the clinic early. She had meant to do a lot of things. But life had a way of shredding plans. Another wave of pain hit. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, a man was standing a few feet away, watching her. Not staring like the others who judged or pitied her in passing. Watching, like he was trying to figure out if she was about to collapse or disappear. He wore plain clothes, dark jeans, a clean jacket, but there was something steady about the way he stood. His eyes didn't shift away, he didn't flinch at her pain. She swallowed and tried again. Please, can you take me to the hospital? For a second she expected him to do what everyone else did. Pretend he didn't hear her. Instead he stepped closer. Are you in labor? His voice was calm in a way that made her want to cry. Calm like he saw people in trouble all the time and didn't scare easily. She nodded. I think so. I can't get there on my own. Okay. He crouched beside her. Can you stand? Yes, just give me a second. He didn't rush her. He offered his hand but didn't grab her, letting her decide if she wanted the help. She took it, surprised by the warmth and the quiet strength in his grip. When she pulled herself up, he steadied her with a hand on her elbow. I'm parked right there, he said. Take your time. She tried to move, but the next contraction made her grip his jacket tight. She hated the sound. She made a small, broken groan she couldn't swallow. She felt embarrassed even though she shouldn't have been. You're doing fine, he told her, low and steady. Those 3 words almost undid her. He got her into his car gently, as if she were made of glass. When he closed the door and walked around to the driver's side, she let herself breathe for the first time in minutes. "Thank you," she said as he started the engine. "You don't have to thank me." She looked at him, really looked. There was something quiet about him, something pulled in. Like he was carrying a weight she couldn't see. His face didn't give much away. No smile, no frown, just calm control. "What's your name?" she asked. "Ethan." "Thank you, Ethan." His hands tightened briefly on the wheel, like the words landed deeper than she meant them to. The drive wasn't long, but every minute felt stretched thin. The contractions came harder, faster. She focused on breathing, counting, anything to stay grounded. Ethan kept his voice steady when he spoke. "You're almost there. You don't have to stay once you drop me off," she said between breaths. "I know you probably have somewhere to be." "I do," he admitted. "But I'm not leaving you until you're with a doctor." Something in his tone told her he meant it. When they pulled into the emergency loop, he jumped out before she could open her door. He flagged down 2 nurses, explaining what was happening with a clarity she didn't have anymore. He walked beside the stretcher as they rushed her through the sliding doors. Her heart pounded. She was scared, more scared than she wanted to admit. She hadn't prepared for any of this to happen today. Inside the room, nurses hooked her up to monitors and checked her vitals. Everything moved fast. People asked questions she could barely answer. But Ethan stayed back, leaning in the corner, giving her space while also staying close enough that she knew she wasn't alone. "Do you have someone to call?" he asked gently. She nodded. "My boyfriend. He'll come." "Good," Ethan said, but something in his tone made it sound like he wasn't sure that was true. She turned her head toward him. His eyes met hers, and she saw something she didn't expect. Concern. Real concern. Not the polite kind people force when they feel obligated. She held onto that for a moment. Drew strength from it. "Thank you for not ignoring me," she said. "Everyone else did." He didn't look away. "You asked for help." The simplicity of it struck her. He said it like that was enough. Like it was obvious. Like she mattered. A contraction hit so strong she grabbed the railing of the bed. She squeezed, her eyes shut. She felt someone take her free hand. She looked up to see Ethan had stepped close again. "Breathe," he said. "Right here with me. Just breathe." She followed his pace, slow and controlled. It helped more than she expected. When the doctor arrived, Ethan stepped back again, becoming a quiet shadow in the room. Lena watched him for a second. There was a strange feeling in her chest, a pull she didn't understand. A kind of recognition, like he knew something about being alone in a crowd. Like they had that in common. She didn't have the words for it, so she focused on the doctor's instructions. Time blurred after that. Her phone buzzed over and over on the table. Mark's name lit up the screen. She kept telling nurses, "Please send him in when he gets here." He didn't arrive for nearly an hour. By then the baby was almost crowning, and Lena was sweating through her gown. She was exhausted, shaking, scared. But she refused to fall apart. Mark burst into the room finally, out of breath like he'd run a marathon. His eyes darted around until they landed on Ethan. "Who the hell is that?" he snapped. Lena winced at the tone. "He helped me get here, that's all." Mark glared at Ethan, then at her, like she betrayed him by being in pain in front of another man. Ethan didn't react. He didn't even blink. He just gave Lena a small nod and stepped toward the door. "You'll be okay," he said quietly. "Thank you," she whispered. He turned and walked out. And she felt the absence immediately, like a door closing in a silent room. She didn't see him again after that. Mark took the chair Ethan had stood near. He didn't ask how she was. He didn't touch her. He didn't look at her with anything like concern. Instead, under his breath, he muttered, "Next time, maybe call me instead of some stranger." She didn't answer. She didn't have the strength to defend herself. Hours later, after the delivery, Lena drifted in and out of sleep while nurses checked on her and the baby. She felt raw, tired, and heavy with emotions she didn't have the energy to sort through. Mark paced the room, rumbling about missing work. At one point she watched him go through her bag, checking pockets. She was too foggy to react, but something hollow settled in her chest when he quietly slipped something into his own pocket. It took her a while to realize it was the cash she'd saved for diapers. Somewhere down the hallway, she thought she heard a familiar voice, a man's voice, speaking quietly with a nurse. Her heart fluttered once, though she couldn't explain why. But when she looked out the doorway, no one was there. Later that evening, Mark finally left to get food, which she doubted. She tried to rest. Her phone vibrated again, but not with messages this time. Notifications. A wave of them. Her sister Rachel had posted something online. Funny how some people pretend they're victims for attention. Pregnancy doesn't make you a saint. Hundreds of comments. People piling on, saying things that cut even though they didn't know her. Lena put the phone down before she could cry. She turned on the small TV mounted in the corner, looking for a distraction. A news alert flashed across the screen. Breaking. CEO Ethan Hale missing during company crisis. A photo appeared, his face unmistakable. Lena's breath caught. Her pulse jumped. It was him. The man who helped her. The man who held her hand through the worst pain she'd ever felt. The man who disappeared before she could thank him. The billionaire everyone was looking for. She stared at the screen, heart pounding, whispering to herself. Why would someone like him stop for me? She didn't know that at that same moment, in a dark parking lot not far from the hospital, Ethan sat in his car with his hands still on the wheel, unable to drive away, asking himself the same thing. Mark didn't come back with food. Lena didn't expect him to, but the empty chair beside her still made her chest tighten. She pulled the thin blanket tighter around her shoulders and looked over at the sleeping baby in the bassinet. The tiny breaths, the small movements, the soft sounds, those were the only steady things in the room. A nurse came in quietly to check the monitors. How are you feeling, sweetheart? Tired, Lena murmured, and sore, and, she hesitated, just everything. The nurse nodded as if she understood the parts Lena didn't say. That's normal. Today was a lot, Lena nodded, because it was easier than explaining the weight sitting behind her ribs. The nurse finished her notes and slipped out. The room felt bigger without anyone in it, like the silence stretched too far. She reached for her phone then stopped. She didn't want to see the notifications. She didn't want to see Rachel's name. She didn't want to see Mark's excuses. Her stomach twisted, not from the birth, but from something else. Something she didn't want to name. She thought about Ethan, his voice, his steadiness, the way he didn't pull back from her pain, and the way he left without letting her thank him. She replayed the moment he stepped out of the room, the calm nod, the careful way he'd said, "You'll be okay." Something in his tone had felt like a promise, like he meant it more than a stranger should. She rubbed her thumb across the edge of the blanket. It was ridiculous to think about him. He probably went back to whatever life men like him had. Jobs, families, real responsibilities. He didn't owe her anything. Still, the space he left behind felt too wide. The door swung open. Mark finally returned, carrying a soda and a half-eaten sandwich he'd clearly started without her. They took forever, he said, though she could smell fast food on him. She didn't bother correcting him. She didn't have the energy. He dropped the sandwich wrapper on the counter, pulled out his phone, and didn't say another word. Not about her, not about the baby, not about the man who helped her. Lena let her head fall back against the pillow. Another contraction hit, not physical this time, but emotional. A squeeze of disappointment. worn and familiar. Mark looked at her sideways. Why are you staring at me? I'm not, she said softly. He snorted. Good, because I didn't come here to get judged. She closed her eyes again, feeling her heartbeat thud against her eyelids. She didn't want to fight. She just wanted peace for 1 minute. He paced, then picked up her bag again. Where's the rest of your cash? Lena's eyes opened. What? You had more earlier. Maybe I used it. I don't know. I wasn't exactly keeping track while giving birth. He studied her face, then shrugged like he didn't believe her, but didn't care enough to push the point. He dropped a bag and went back to scrolling. She wished she could disappear into the blanket. A soft knock sounded at the door, but before she could answer, a nurse stepped in, holding a clipboard. Do you need me to take the baby to the nursery for a bit so you can rest? Lena looked over at the bassinet, torn. She wanted to sleep, but she also wanted to keep the baby close. She didn't want anything else taken from her today. Mark spoke first. Yeah, take him. She needs sleep. Lena stiffened. I didn't say that. The nurse looked between them, waiting. Lena shook her head. He stays with me. The nurse nodded and left. Mark muttered something under his breath, but she didn't ask what. She didn't want to hear it. Her phone vibrated again on the tray table. Mark glanced at it and scoffed. Your sister's at it again, he said. She's posting all this crap about you. A cold ache slid through Lena. What did she say? That you're dramatic, that you act helpless, that you're basically doing this for attention. Lena covered her eyes with her hand. Why does she hate me so much? Because she's right, Mark said. The words hit harder than the contractions had. She didn't respond. She couldn't. If she did, she might break. Mark sighed and grabbed his jacket. I'm going outside. Aaron here feels heavy. He left before she could decide whether she wanted him gone or wanted him to stay. The room quieted again. The only sound was the steady beep of the monitor and the soft breaths of her newborn. Lena wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand and made herself breathe evenly. She reached for the remote and clicked the TV on. Anything to fill the silence. A commercial played first. Then a reporter's face filled the screen, urgent and polished. Breaking news tonight. CEO Ethan Hale remains unaccounted for as Hale Industries faces a major shareholder dispute. Lena froze. The air went thin. A photo appeared alongside the reporter, sharp jaw, steady eyes. Plain clothes. Ethan. Her Ethan. The stranger who helped her into his car. The man who held her hand during contractions. The man who stayed until he knew she wasn't alone. The man who left quietly, almost like he didn't want to be seen. Her heart pounded against her ribs like it wanted out. She leaned forward, staring at the screen, as if trying to pull him from it. The reporter continued. Sources say he disappeared from corporate meetings earlier this afternoon. His absence is expected to impact the ongoing vote. But Lena didn't hear the rest. A sharp breath escaped her. Oh my God, she whispered. That was him. The reality hit her all at once, rushing in too fast to brace for. Ethan Hale, a billionaire, a missing CEO, a man whose name people said like it carried weight. And he had been standing on a street corner in plain clothes, offering her help when everyone else walked past. She clutched the blanket with both hands, heart thudding so loudly she could hear it. Why would someone like him stop for me? She whispered. She didn't know that at that exact moment, in the dark hospital parking lot, Ethan Hale was sitting behind the wheel of his car. Engine off, still unable to force himself to drive away, asking himself the same question. You watching from? And how did this story speak to you? Lena didn't sleep much the night after giving birth. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan's face on the hospital TV, half-shadowed, half-lit, like someone caught between two different worlds. She kept hearing his voice too, steady, calm, grounding in a way she still didn't understand. By morning, the nurses had removed her IV and told her she could go home later that day if everything stayed normal. She tried to focus on that. A fresh start. A new life with her baby. A chance to breathe again. Mark stumbled in around 9, smelling like cigarettes and cold air. His hair was messy and he had the look of someone who hadn't slept either. But Lena knew the difference between worry and guilt. He wore guilt on him like a jacket. "You could have texted me," he said before even saying hello. "I was asleep," Lena answered, "and you weren't here." His mouth pulled tight. "You're always making me the bad guy." Lena didn't argue. She held her baby instead, letting the warmth of the tiny body calm her. Mark paced near the window. "So when can we leave?" "The doctor said maybe this afternoon." "Good," he muttered, "because we can't stay here. You know how expensive hospitals are." Even though Ethan had covered everything, Mark didn't know that. She hadn't told him. She wasn't sure why. Maybe because she wanted something in her life that wasn't immediately turned into a fight. A soft knock sounded and a nurse opened the door. "You have a visitor." Lena looked at Mark, confused, but then the nurse stepped aside. Ethan Hale walked in. He wasn't dressed like a billionaire. His shirt sleeves were rolled up. His jacket looked simple, practical. He carried no entourage, no noise, no pressure, just quiet presence. Lena's breath caught. Mark's expression twisted immediately. "You again." Ethan nodded politely, but didn't look at him long. His eyes found Lena, and that was all. "I wanted to make sure you were all right." Her throat tightened. I am, thank you." He stepped closer, but not too close, keeping a respectful distance. "And the baby?" "She's healthy," Lena said, glancing down at her daughter with a soft smile. "They said we might go home today." "That's good," he said quietly. "You did well yesterday." The compliment warmed her in a place she thought had gone cold. Mark folded his arms. "Why are you here?" Ethan's jaw tightened for half a second, but his tone stayed calm. "Because she didn't deserve to go through that alone." Lena looked at him, surprised at how simply he said it, like the truth didn't need decorating. Mark scoffed. "Well, she had me." Ethan didn't answer. He didn't need to. Lena felt the tension forming like static. "It's fine. It was kind of him to check on us, that's all." Ethan nodded once. "If you need anything, rides, supplies, anything practical, here's my number." He set a card on the table. "I can take care of my own girlfriend," Mark snapped. Ethan finally looked at him straight on, his voice steady. "Then take care of her." Mark's mouth opened like he had a comeback. But nothing came out. Lena's cheeks warmed, and she wasn't sure if it was embarrassment or something else beneath the surface. Something that made her chest feel too full. Before anyone could say more, Ethan turned back to her. "Rest today. Don't rush anything." "I won't," she said softly. "I'll stop by tomorrow to see how you're settling in." He said it lightly, like a casual offer. But Lena saw something else in his eyes. Something careful. Something he wasn't naming. Then he left the room, the door clicking shut with a final, quiet sound. Mark waited all of 3 seconds before exploding. "So that's it. You're collecting rich guys now. Going behind my back while I'm out trying to take care of us." "What?" Lena stared at him. "Mark, no. He just helped me, that's all." "He helped you too much." "He saved me, Mark. I was in labor on the sidewalk. Nobody else cared." "That doesn't mean you let him hang around afterward." "He came to check on us, that's it." Mark paced back and forth, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't like it." She didn't say it, but she didn't care if he liked it. She cared about someone doing the right thing without expecting something in return. Ethan hadn't tried to touch her or impress her. He didn't flirt. He didn't brag. He wasn't even warm. He was just steady. Part of her wished she could be that steady too. When they finally discharged her, Mark handled the papers while she bundled the baby against her chest. Outside, the air was cool and sharp. They waited for the rideshare Mark had called. But Lena paused when she saw a familiar car parked across the lot, a dark sedan, the same one Ethan had driven yesterday. He was sitting inside, hands on the wheel, watching to make sure she made it out safely. When he saw her look over, he gave a small nod through the window. Not a wave, not a smile. Just a quiet confirmation that he was there if she needed him. She nodded back. Mark didn't catch the exchange. He was too busy complaining about the wait time. The ride home was uncomfortable in ways she couldn't explain. The baby was fussing. Her body ached. Mark kept muttering about bills. Nothing felt safe. Nothing felt settled. Their apartment wasn't much. When they walked in, the air smelled like old takeout containers. Clothes were piled on the couch. The sink held plates she didn't remember leaving. Lena adjusted her daughter in her arms. "I'll clean up later. No rush," Mark said, already dropping onto the couch. "Hand me the baby." She hesitated. "Let me just get settled." "Just give her here," he snapped. Lena stiffened, then passed the baby over gently. Mark held her like he was holding his own.